tuning in to watch this video. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for new punk rock videos every week and tap the bell to get notified when new videos drop. My name is Erin Micklow and I'm here with Eugene from Gogol Bordello. How are you?
Yeah, all right.
It's so nice to be here with you. My first memories of your band, what really put you on my radar was when I was a teenager. There were these guys that I would hang out with, and one of them had the slingshot tattooed on his arm, and he was just like, "This band is so important to me. Do you know who they are?" And I was like, "I don't. Who are they?" And he's like, "Their music," and he was just freaking out. So
Right. He was in a sect. Yeah.
So you do have a new album out called Solidarity. Can you talk about the process of making this album, your influences, your inspirations?
It's kind of a almost self-made album because, you know, when you have so much turmoil, like political and pandemic, so-called pandemic, whatever the fuck it was, you know, war in Ukraine is just like things are bubbling up faster to the surface of the skull than they usually do, and they bubble up in a lot more you know, impactful way, just kind of. So it actually was a very fast made record. Like, we booked the studio for 5 days, we left after 4, you know, as opposed to like booking for a month and then editing 2 weeks.
Yeah.
In fact, in retrospect, I'm thinking, like, looking at the albums that were taking like 2 months, and I'm thinking, like, what were we doing there for 2 months? You know?
Wasting money.
Well, no, you want, I mean, because we have so many instruments, you know, we're kind of obsessed with this idea of like, so many members, you know, with like, some of them are kind of like, you know, kind of like virtuosos and from a classical point of view. So we're kind of obsessed with this idea of making some kind of a sympho punk. Sounds so terribly offensive.
Yeah.
And ridiculous, but how can it be? But it actually works in certain sense because, you know, like, I mean, it's all music, but I think we already gave that idea a final shot, and it's done.
Yeah. Well, it was like when
So now
Green
we're
Day.
just back to gypsy punk.
Yeah, but when Green Day hit Broadway with American Idiot, like they did that whole thing. And
Right. Yeah, kind of like that, but not more like, I don't know, more like if Dead Kennedys would go like into like, you know, like Dead Kennedys was a big influence. Like there was a lot of, like every part of the song was different beats, and there was a lot of kind of, you know, it was like all like swimming up the stream at all times, and very dramatic sounding and very like grotesque and humorous and scary at the same time. So that kind of symphopunk, you know, that's kind of what I mean.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I've seen in interviews that now you're back to, you know, just the raw, like
More
kind of
stripped down, yeah.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about that your influences obviously are in punk, hardcore, a lot of the UK punk bands, like you do cover an
Yeah.
Angelic Upstart
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
Mency, R.I.P. Mency.
Yeah. I mean, he passed away, as we all know. It's just like that song, you know, when it came out as a tribute to the Polish solidarity movement, that was like so crucial for people in Eastern Europe. You know, because it was a real song about that issue. It wasn't like vague or like, oh, we support like these, workers somewhere out there. It was like on the money.
Yeah.
And, the guy had so much heart, man. So just like, it was kind of like a huge deal, for subculture kids over there. And now that song just perfectly, it's like a double tribute. Like the reason why we do it now is it's like a double tribute to angelic upstarts minding, tectonic shifts that are happening over there in Eastern Europe, supporting, Polish workers fighting against communist dictatorship. And now it's like a double tribute to that and to Polish people who are supporting Ukrainian people fighting the war. So it's kind of comes from that place.
I mean, well, Mency was that person, He
Yeah.
was very opinionated, and I see a lot of personality traits from him with you, where it's like you don't give a fuck. This is how you feel, and you're not scared to say it.
The whole punk rock is about that basically. I mean, it's like if you dig it, then you dig it, and and so dig it, and that's that.
Yeah,
that's the end of the story.
Yeah. So you do have a phrase, like a shot of solidarity. Can you talk about what that means to you? What is that?
Well, how in artists often you have to invent things and kind of make them propel new words to life in order to describe really the situation. So solidarity is a kind of solidarity rhymes with adrenaline.
Yeah.
Almost. I rhyme it.
Yeah.
So the word is created in order to describe kind of a substance or a hormone or hormone. Adrenaline is a hormone. So that's kind of like inspires us people to get on a page for a common good. Because that's really the only engine of survival.
For sure.
Getting anything done, you absolutely need. You need free will, and you need people with free will on the same page.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of solidarity is that as people who are in touch with their free will and can see straight. It's not everybody can. Getting together on the same page, staying critical thinking, staying, being decisive about what they do, being proactive about what they do.
Yeah. Well, and that's everything. I feel like, your band just is that. You're so outspoken, and that is one of the things that I really admire about your music and your performances is that you know what side that you stand on when you're at one of your shows, that you say what you feel,
Thank
what
you.
you think.
Yeah, I mean, it's our way.
Can we talk about, you've had some lineup changes. Can we talk about the current lineup and how you guys got together?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get together. It's just an ongoing thing. Like, there's a core of the band, and after pandemic, pandemic affects people differently. So I think a lot of people during pandemic had a tectonic shift.
Yeah.
One way or another. So, some people decide to do something else with their life, and which is totally fine. And a person who, we're never not the kind of band who like looks for somebody to like join the band, like puts up ads, like that never happens. It's usually like somebody who's already in the extended family of the band, and then just I mean, Gil is a friend of Boris. They played together in a band for many years. So Gil, our Brasileiro stepped in and has been rocking it and smoking it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then did I see this? Is Toby new to the band? No. Yes.
No, it's been about 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was watching you guys, and the last time I saw you play was so many years ago, and I know then you had a different lineup. The last time I saw your live set was when you opened for Flogging Molly on their tour, maybe like 2000. It was a while ago. It was at least 2015.
Yeah, maybe something like that. But Toby is Boris's ex-girlfriend.
Really?
So,
obviously they parted on good terms.
So, yeah, I mean that's another thing. It's good people, you know. So, you know, and she came in as a kind of very serious girl with the pipes and great vocals, you know.
Yeah.
And then she was, you know, together with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth went on to become an actress. And Pam came back.
Yeah. And
then Ashley and Pam were a couple for a while on tour. And so we're like a hockey team, you know, in a way. Like, these guys are on the bench, these guys are playing. You know.
Must be how it is when you have a band with so many members. Like last week when I was coincidentally in Dallas at the same time as you guys, it was really nice to see your live set again. And I was watching you guys, and I was just like, holy fuck, there's a lot of them. Like, there's so many.
There was a lot of them. That's a lot of us. Yeah.
I'm like, and I was wondering, I was like, God, how is it, you know, traveling together? And then
it was used to more. It was the most expanded version of Gogol Bordello was 9 people.
Holy shit, that's almost worse than a ska band.
Hey, something to be said in defense of ska.
No, I love ska. You actually...
you know that podcast, right? In defense of ska.
I don't know that one.
I was just doing it the other week.
Okay. But your drummer now, he played in the Aggrolites initially.
And the Hepcats.
Yeah. So I was like, oh.
Yeah, he played on Tim Armstrong's solo album, which is a great album, I think, that kind of like nobody knows really.
Yeah.
But that's Corey too.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, Corey definitely, we had always a lot of ska element in there, but we were kind of doing ska without
Horns.
Talking about it.
Like,
and
just you do have.
I can make a playlist right now of like 15 songs that I have like ska parts from Gogol Bordello things, you know, albums. But I guess Corey, because he's such a master of ska, it's more pronounced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But you guys as a band, I mean, that is what makes you special, because there's nobody else really like you, at least in America, and that's where it's like your show.
It's not just America. Believe me.
It's such an experience to see, because it's like, what is gypsy punk? I remember talking to that guy being first introduced to your band. I was like, what is this? What the fuck do you mean gypsy punk?
Well, I mean, if you don't want people to misrepresent what you're doing, you got to come up with your own term of it. Yeah. So I learned it from Sonic Youth. You know, it was like a big influence on me back in the day, you know, because they had this kind of term, artcore. You know? Yeah. Because they weren't really hardcore. I mean, it was a loud, distorted punk rock music with like avant-garde, kind of atonality to it. But it was a clever way to put it. Like, we're not hardcore, we're artcore. I was like, I nailed it. So I thought the same thing, like, before people are gonna start coming up with some stupid descriptions for us, you know, then just take the main legs of our music that we were kind of united by, you know. And the formative years, gypsy music was very important, you know, like because it's like part of my family's come from Romani background. So it was like, yeah, I kind of saw the connection of that raw kind of flamboyantness of it to like, punk rock, and I was right, because I used to love Adamant when I was like 15, and then I read that he's also a Romani.
Yeah?
Yeah, totally.
Well, so
I was like, okay, it all makes sense.
Bands. You had some bands obviously before Gogol Bordello started.
Oh yeah.
Your early punk bands. The first one, what was it? Vinegar Faces.
Yeah, it's a Vinegar Face, or like Bitter Faces.
Yeah.
Translates kind of like that.
Yeah, and then you had the band The Fags, and then which turned into the Cossacks.
Yeah, the Cossacks. Yeah.
Because the name was a little.
No, in the 90s, names like this were like.
Yeah, you were allowed.
Everything you ever wanted and more. We were on every like. TV show in England, and every radio show. People loved it, especially people from, LGBTQ community. They were like,
really?
they were the ones.
To it?
No, the 90s offense. People take offense now.
Yeah.
For absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
In the 90s, it was like, bring it on. Whoever can get more outrageous and Buckwild, that was the thing,
Yeah. Well, so can we talk about those early bands and how that kind of paved the way, for Gogol Bordello, the band that you've obviously been in the longest?
Yeah, well, I mean, they all kind of, back in Ukraine, couple albums we recorded, I was just like 15, 16, and then I was really quite polyglotic about like punk rock, like since it hit me like, I was listening to everything from Exploited to Devo and, like Varukers and One Way System and, I'm not even, Sex Pistols, Clash, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
That kind of just really blew my mind, But I also listened to a lot of like no wave, Alan Vega and Suicide and stuff like that, that had a more like Joy Division, The Fall, stuff like that. So I started to know about, and Nick Cave was very important.
Yeah.
Because that was basically kind of like, okay, this is like punk rock Bob Dylan, and it was very eloquent and kind of had storytelling vibe. And then when you're younger, you're just more driven by energy. So those bands, when I first got in the States, I started going to a lot of hardcore shows on 242 Main. I was showing you the clip that kind of like the CBGBs of Vermont. It kind of took me in as one of their own. It was a great place, completely all-inclusive, and like, I didn't speak any English, and kids were just like, "Hey, like, you're coming with us, dude. Like, you got a kind of right jacket on, You're like,
You're part of the club.
Yeah, you're gonna be in the gang now, man." So started cruising around East Coast, seeing shows, Shelter, I was like, wow, the things that are developing here. It's like Hare Krishna hardcore, it's like, it's like a thing, and just going and seeing like, Leeway, the Biohazard. So, Agnostic Front, Madball, like Murphy's Law, talking about like bringing it back to a touch of ska right there, So all that was like, I was absorbing it and soaking it up. And the first band that I got into was Epitaph. And it was basically kind of like thrash crossover band, because we were really into like Leeway and, and Quicksand just came out. So like kind of like that kind of like little thrash crossover, more into like post-hardcore kind of vibe. But that wasn't my band. I played bass in that band. I just joined dudes who were like, two of them had like shaved heads and two dudes just had very long hair, It was like that kind of, So, after a while, I was like, okay, I think I'm kind of did some mileage here, when like, all the immigration stories. And I was like, I think I want to start like writing songs that tell the stories. And so then we started the Fags with Dana Shepherd, who was from Newfoundland, actually. He was a Canadian guy. He was just like from dynasty of all these older brothers that were all like Black Flag kind of guys. They were just like older punk rockers, So I learned a lot from them about like, all the American punk and hardcore. That's kind of how it went in the 90s.
What was it that made you move to New York? Because I feel like, that's what got you exposed into all these scenes and these, meeting people to form your new band.
Yeah.
And so what was it that made you move?
Well, I think that was kind of, it's like this. It was like, it's kind of unquestionable. It all fell into place because the music that I loved the most came from New York City.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever I would hear, I'd be like, that's the fucking cream of the crop of the fucking bunkers, Buckwild, crazy shit that I want to be in,
Yeah.
It will always turn out to be from New York, So like Beat Agnostic Front or like, Alan Vega or James Chance and the Contortions, It's all kind of like, it was just like a vector for me. Like it was always like, whoop, there we go again. And so we started going playing with the Cossacks to New York City in the CBGBs, and Coney Island High was a great place of Jesse Malin. By 95, 96. And I remember going there and being like, here's a punk club. We just played a show. You walk out, half block is away. It's a Ukrainian restaurant. Yeah. And then it's another punk club. Back then there was a lot of them, Brownies and Pyramid and Continental, like all of them were still rocking, and an Ukrainian bar, and then like another kind of, dodgy place to play music, and Ukrainian social clubs. So I was like, honey, I'm home. Like,
yeah, you felt like it wasn't such a scary move for you as an immigrant not speaking the language because there were pieces of home.
Yeah, well, I wasn't scared of it at all. I just kind of, I don't know. I mean, I grew up in Ukraine in the outskirts of Kiev, so
yeah.
It wasn't like so different from living in the Bronx, There wasn't like anything. I mean, in fact, it was exactly like that. It's just tons of buildings with, tons of projects with really just sand, some pavement, and.
Yeah. Is that where you moved when you moved to New York? Did you move to the Bronx or?
No, I moved to East Village, but I grew up in Avalon,
But the East Village was also kind of scary too, right?
Yeah, I guess I caught somebody told me something kind of like funny that I kind of caught the last call of it, last call of cool, magical New York when I was. Yeah, I mean, I lived like on a ridge street. It's a house and below Avenue C. So we, it had all that vibe that you read about and like in like Roger Mirad book.
Yeah.
Am I right? It had some elements of that,
For sure.
And I had several encounters that could be in that book.
I believe that. right now you're on a 19-date tour with Crazy in the Brains, supporting, who we hear very loudly above us right now.
They are.
Who we gotta go see here in a minute, so we should wrap this up.
And sing with,
Yeah, you're about to go sing with them. I'm supposed to film them. Wrap this up. But can you share some stories from this tour? Good, bad?
Nothing too terrible so far. What I like about it is that, I mean, we only met Crazy in the Brains. I only met Chris like 10 days before the tour, you know, and...
Did you meet him when we were all at the Howie Pyro tribute in LA? Was that your first time
No, I
meeting?
met him at the Hardcore Matinee.
Okay, and that was right before that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, somebody said, you know, hey, you got to check out these guys. And then Chris came over and was like, hey, man, like, what's going on? You know, like, just, you know, just standing on a sidewalk talking, basically. And which is so cool. Like, now after pandemic, I think there's a lot of people reviving that, not a lot, but why am I saying a lot? It's actually very unique. But in New York, it's happening, you know, like Drew Stone and the hardcore scene is kind of bringing back a tradition of like having that like hardcore matinee motor. And it's really important because that's kind of how I grew up. There was like a regularity and ongoingness. Like you just go and there'll be like 6 bands playing and you may not even, you may see maybe one of those bands, but that's like, you know, it's on.
Yeah.
It's a scene. It's a thing. You meet people and you start a band from there. So I feel like that's like really rejuvenates the times and rejuvenates the you know, shows one more time why like the whole subculture and punk music is important, because people who think it's fashion, they're not really getting what it's about, and they will never get it. It's really not about that. It's about understanding how, you know, you can persevere and kind of against all odds on your own path to creative dream vision, whatever you have, with like zero support.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so I really like that we met kind of like that, and then, you know, no managers, no agents, you know, involved. I mean, with all the respect to our teams, you know, but here we are. It was just like a bunch of kids like hit it off on the street, and now here we are. And then Puzzled Panthers flew in.
Yeah.
Like these guys basically like formed the band while flying in here and like saltoing in the air and like boom, landed on stage, and you know, Rob and Zach from Crazy in the Brain like gracefully agreed to co-rock with them. So we're witnessing a lot of creativity happening on a fly, you know, like they played their first gig when like they only met on stage sound checking right before the show. They just like listened to the songs and learned them on a fly. I like that kind of energy, you know, there's like a lot of life about that.
It's just representative of your career as a whole, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if I'd come up to somebody and like, you know, in some like big management or I don't know, some booker of some big festival and be like, yo, how about this? I'm gonna play this like Eastern European inspired punk rock with like, you know, like burlesque dancers and like a classical violin player, and just go completely ham in the middle of it all.
Yeah. And
then have like, you know, like Latino American rapper on the side. Like, you down with that? You want us to headline? People would be like,
no.
Fuck no. You know what I mean? But you know, like, we're doing it, and then 5 years later, like, we're doing all those festivals.
You're headlining.
You know? So it was just like,
yeah.
all right, so that's what punk rock is about. You know?
Yeah, it's you know, and that's just the industry as a whole as well. Is that
And they're like, wow, I really loved it since the beginning. Yeah, you were great. I noticed it right away. Yeah.
Fuck you.
Sure.
Oh God. Well, I think I'm gonna close with that because you have to get on stage. I have to film them. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time tonight.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
You know, thanks. What's happening, everybody? I'm Eugene Hütz from Gogol Bordello. You're watching Lost Rockers TV.